Good morning. I'm continuing with my series on the First American Chess Congress. We're in round 3, and it's the second game between Theodore Lichtenstein and Paul Morphy. This time Morphy has the white pieces, and he leads 1-0. The first player to score 3 wins goes through to the next round. Draws don't count. So, no surprise from Morphy, plays e4. e5. Knight to f3. Kind of a quiet opening. Knight to f6. Petros defense. Bishop to c4, the Urasov gambit. And knight takes pawn. The Lichtenstein defense. So this is the defense of the Urasov gambit, named after the player with the black pieces, Lichtenstein. I think he developed this defense to the Urasov gambit, and it wouldn't be surprising if he developed it in this game. Queen to e2 is a good move. Castling is a good move. Typically, Morphy develops another piece with knight c3. The pawn comes to d5, and Morphy takes with the bishop. The knight comes to f6. Yeah. And the bishop goes back to b3. So if we assess it now, this is the Boden-Kieseritsky Frankenstein Dracula. White has 3 pieces out, black has only 1. Black is the only one with a pawn in the centre, and there are some dangers for white associated with the advance to e5, e4. Sorry, with the only pawn in the middle. Yeah, it's kind of an even situation. But Lichtenstein plays bishop to d6. Simple developing move. d3, permanently, or at least for now, preventing the advance at e4. He castles, and Morphy takes the time to play pawn to h3. In this situation, it might be difficult if he gets to pin the knight. Maybe come here with the pawn, maybe come with the knight here to c6 and the knight to d4. It can be difficult, so he takes the time out to prevent that move. I'm not so sure it's so necessary for Lichtenstein to play h6. The chances of Morphy playing bishop to g5 are small. It isn't a really threatening or progressive move. But Morphy reacts by just playing bishop to e3. Then it comes to c6. And the queen comes to d2. So that Morphy is in a position to castle long, making opposite sides castling game. So yeah, nice active choice by Morphy. And the knight comes to a5, guaranteeing that he gets the bishop. So he ends up with the bishop pair. But even although it gives him the bishop pair, you know, it is moving a piece for a second time in the opening, and Morphy takes the opportunity of the non-developing move to play g4 and prevent the bishop from coming to c4, even f4, even f5 at any point in time. So Lichtenstein takes the bishop, and Morphy takes back. Notice that this immediately gives him an attack on the a2, a7 pawn. Double attack on the a7 pawn. Bishop comes to d7. White plays the rook to g1, forgetting any ideas of castling short I don't think he was thinking of that anyway. And maybe threatening to come to g5 with the pawn and start breaking up the position. So the knight comes to h7 for further defense of the g5 square. The knight comes to e4, a good centralized square, maybe not threatening to play knight takes bishop, since he looks like he's castling long, and in which case he doesn't really want to be opening the c file against his own king in a hurry. The rook comes to h8 to get off the g file, which is about to be ripped open. The real point of the knight e4 move was to support g5 one more time. So he goes past, sensible enough. And the knight comes to h4, threatening to come to g6 with the pawn, and then take with the knight. So black plays g6 straight away to prevent g6 being played, but you can see this isn't a strong position for black. His king is looking a bit airy there, and you know, a check on this diagonal could be very frightening for black here. So queen comes to e2, maybe threatening at some point in time to take here, maybe to come here with the idea of coming, maybe to come to f3 with the idea of coming to f6 at some point in time if it is possible. Bishop comes to c6 to threaten the knight. I don't think he's at all bothered about that, Morphy. So he plays f4 to break open lines again. It's a pure pawn sacrifice, of course, because if he takes, Morphy can't take back, but of course if he takes, Morphy will be playing bishop to d4 check. And like the 9 can't resist the pawn. I would be resisting the pawn with all my might. Oof, definitely. And the bishop comes to d4 check. King comes to d8, and you might think, okay, well the knight comes in here. That's the obvious move. But Morphy goes, as usual, for a very active but less obvious move, and he plays knight to f5. I think, yeah. Oh, he plays knight to f5, yeah. So he's threatening knight to h6, checkmate, which almost forces the knight to be taken. But instead, he tries to make a space for his king to run. Not a wise choice, that's all. Knight comes to h6, and the king has only one square to go to. Yeah. When your king has no squares to run to, a check is naturally mate. So, Morphy, long castles now. Yeah, he might at some point in time be looking to play knight here. Even although it exposes his queen, you know, it would give him the chance to play knight takes, knight check. Yeah. So bishop takes pawn, bishop takes knight, and pawn takes. And now he might be threatening to play pawn here. If the bishop takes, he can take, and then maybe pawn here and an attack on the queen. Doesn't work at the moment, but you know, it's a long-term plan which might be able to be made to work. Queen comes to e7, and the pawn goes to e5. He just wants the the line open anyway. He's not bothered about giving up a pawn. So bishop takes, and queen takes. And, he just completely ignores the attack on his own queen and makes his own attack on d7 with the rook threatening. Rook takes f7, mate. Just incredible. He just completely ignores that attack. This must have been a real shocker for Liechtenstein. He must have been expecting that either the queen was going to move or the queens were going to be swapped off. But of course, Morphy does something different. The queen comes to g7 to defend the pawn, and then if rook takes, then queen takes, knight takes, rook takes queen, and he's got an extra rook. Of course, Morphy first plays queen to c4 to double up on the pawn, and the rook comes to e7. He's got to defend the pawn on f7 somehow, and it gets taken. And the rook comes to e1 check, and he resigns because if he comes here to d1 to d8, he's going to get checked again with the queen, and then the rook is going to be saying mate on e8. And if he comes to f8, then queen here is mate because the knight prevents the king from moving to here, and the rook would prevent him coming back to the d file. So, in other words, it's going to be mate in a few moves. And yeah, that was a 2-0 to Morphy. Liechtenstein lasted a little bit longer this time, 29 moves. But again, he was expecting a prosaic reply from Morphy, and Morphy didn't do. It wasn't his style to do the thing that you expected all the time. He played good active moves that were kind of unexpected. Put his pieces on the best possible squares and exploited his opponent's weaknesses ruthlessly and efficiently. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share my videos. Thanks. Bye.